Hello everyone, welcome to Dr. Quack House Calls. I'm Dr. Quack, and today I kind of want to go off on a little bit of a rant here. And I want to talk about the world of professional wrestling. I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because if you look at the world of professional wrestling today, it is not as popular as it was during the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, the Golden Age of the 80s. It is not. It is about the equivalent of the Next Generation Era. Slightly better, but not by much. There's a lot of things about today's wrestling that just sucks. I mean, just to look at it. First, let's talk about the big one here. Let's talk about how Vince McMahon has left the WWE. How he has now sold it over, and it's now TKO or whatever it is, Endeavor, the UFC people, Dana White, they all got their ownership on it. That is a big problem. Because wrestling fans, they're not really interested in that. They want to see their good stuff like they used to. They want to see your great rivalries. They want to see your larger-than-life living legends, go out there and fight. Even back in those days, during the Attitude Era, I mean, you look at it, you had The Rock, you had Stone Cold, you had Mick Foley, you had Triple H, you had The Undertaker. You had all those guys in their prime, all fighting there. Plus Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, so many more I could name. Today, what do you really have? You have Roman Reigns, okay, household name. He wants to go to Hollywood. He really does. I don't think he likes to wrestle as much as he used to. Brock Lesnar, who's making hella money and wasn't named during the Ruthless Aggression Era, took his time off, came back. Everybody loves Cowboy Brock. But, and for the first time in his career, he's actually enjoying it. But outside that, who do you have? You have a bunch of people that are basically forced down your throats. And I'm even talking women's wrestling. I'm sorry. I know everybody is like, oh, no, you can't talk bad about them. Yeah, I can. Because pro wrestling for women was different during the 80s and 90s. In the 80s, it was a different time. They didn't get put up there like they are now in the main event status. Which, in some cases, I don't believe some of these women wrestlers really deserve that. Today's women's wrestling is not as, exciting to me as it was during the 90s. Yeah, I know the 90s had, their bra and panties matches and gravy bowl matches and stuff like that. But they actually had great talent on that roster. They had Trish Stratus, who had to come back here and work. A name. You had to bring a name in, right? Lita, another one who had to come back. You had Jackie back then. You had Molly Holly, right? You had so many great women's wrestlers. Alundra Blaze, had to wrestle during the bad times of women's wrestling when it was just her and a bunch of people from Japan that tend to come over. And Bertha Faye, don't forget her. There's so much differences in this. I mean, people talk like, oh yeah, it's getting better. No, it's not. Like 2 to 3 million people in the United States watch professional wrestling on TV. That's what you see on the Nielsen ratings. You think of it as 328 million people in the United States alone. And only roughly 2 to 3 million TVs are on. So let's just say there's 3 people watching per, which I know there's not always, But we'll say that's 9 million. During the Attitude Era, WCW, WWF at that point, they were hitting 6-7 million viewers a week. And WrestleMania was at a sky high during that time frame. I mean, if you really want to go to 3-1, that's 18. That's damn near double what the guys do today. To me, pro wrestling, maybe because I'm older, it's very boring. I see like this dumbass 4 to 5 hour pay-per-views. And people are like, this is boring, this is sad. People are doing other shit while this thing is on. But you notice back when the Attitude Era was there, 2.5, 3 hours, and people were entertained for 2.5, 3 hours. And even had ECW involved towards the end of it before they ended up selling their company. I mean, at that point, you had good wrestling on every day of the week almost. You had your Raw, you had your SmackDown, you had your Thunder, you had your Nitro, you had ECW on TNN. You know, you had a bunch of good stuff, and everything was great. It was great for the wrestlers, too, because people got paid. And I'm not just talking about the big guys getting paid. I'm talking about the guys that, even on the indie scene, were making good money. You know, comparison today. Today, it's like a hot dog and a handshake, or maybe you'll get transportation like $40, you know, and that's not probably even going to cover any other expenses. A lot of these guys, even your bigger names on the independent scene, if they're making, you know, $300-400, that's amazing. You know, there might be some above that, but not many. Because people don't go to independent wrestling shows anymore. People don't go anymore to go watch stuff like professional wrestling. They would rather watch stuff on TV. Let me just stream it and stay at home. You know, and that's why you seen WWE, they had to put their stuff on Hulu and Peacock. Here, we'll sell our whole library to Peacock. I think that was a great move for Vince. I think it was a bad move for professional wrestling. I really do. I understand why Vince did it. He took his money. He went home. You know, he made his $9 billion, and he can sit at home and do whatever he wants to for the rest of his life. I mean, the man's earned it. He's, what, in his late 70s, early 80s. Not sure his actual birthday right now, but you get the point. There's just so many bad things that are involved with pro wrestling. Nobody wants to do it to be a professional wrestler. Nobody. Well, okay, maybe a few. But majority of people, they look at pro wrestling as a stepping stone. Here, I'm going to go enter pro wrestling. If I can make it to the E, I'm going to wrestle there for 6 months in NXT or whatever. And then I'm going to go and do, like, you know, anything else. You know, like I'm going to do a talk show. Might want to do this, that, or the other. But they don't stay involved in professional wrestling a lot anymore. It's like conventions. That's why a lot of people, they like to go to conventions. Because they see their favorite stars from back when they were young. You know, and even kids that are in their 20s today know who half these guys are. Because they got to bring them up constantly on television. So they continue their relevancy. They also don't give a damn about their current talent. And there's a few guys out there that people like, but they're not household names. You know, they pushed Becky Lynch to be the man, and it had her on ESPN and everything else. That was them shoving it down people's throats. Like, that's what you do. Do I believe wrestling is going to get better? Probably not. I mean, it might, but the odds of it are pretty damn slim. I watched the last pay-per-view. They had a few good matches on there, but nothing great. Nothing that stands the test of time of what it was back in the days. You know, and I see all these young kids. I'm like, yeah, it's better today. We love 50 side kicks and thigh slap and everything else. You just wait, because that's going to be the funny part. I'm going to probably be in my 60s by that point, and you'll be in there around my age, around 40. And you'll be having the next generation. If there is professional wrestling, God knows. I'm telling you, with this whole sale, I don't know if it continues on. It's the longest reigning sport in all the world. It started back with the caveman days. I don't believe they ran track and field. You know, I believe more they ended up wrestling. You know, for food and such. It's just a jacked up world. It's the world of professional wrestling. I wish it would get better. You know, I think they got a show here in October. I think I just saw a commercial for it while I was on Peacock. Because most of the time when I got Peacock on, I am watching wrestling from the 80s until roughly, I would say, 2007. Right? That's about my time frame right there. After 2007, it's certain shows. It shows that, you know, I would remember and really wanted to watch again. But a lot of times, I'm watching Saturday Night's Main Event from the 80s. I'm watching, you know, all the Survivor Series and WrestleManias. You know, and I'll watch WCW. You watch that stuff all through there in the 90s. You know, just many of different things that they did differently that were successful. People don't understand that. They really don't. You know, they just think, here, let's just throw some spaghetti against the wall and see if it sticks. You know? Don't really see how this is going to work out for professional wrestling. I think we're near the end of it. It may mutate into something else. I've heard that, you know, coming from Kevin Sullivan. The mutation of pro wrestling, the evolution of it, I guess we'll call it. But it's definitely not going to be the same. And that's what professional wrestling is to me. I just felt like making this rant because I wanted to make a video. I'm going to go back to the whole dating process here probably in a little bit. But I felt like getting out my thoughts here since Vince McMahon ended up selling the WWE completely to Endeavor. Till next time, I'm Dr. Quack.